This started when I was at my childhood friend's apartment for what was supposed to be a little fun movie night. We hadn't hung out in a while and were catching up. Her place was cozy, a little disorganized, and full of girly decor. We were in our comfiest sweatpants, about to watch princess movies. Her apartment isn't the tidiest. Things are a bit scattered around, but it's clean and so authentic, which always made me feel at home. We decided on ordering pizza for dinner. She mentioned that Sherwood, someone I hadn't met yet, would bring the pizza over. At first, I was not happy to hear that. I thought that she meant she had invited other friends, a boy, over to join us, which wasn't what I had in mind. But I was in for a surprise. Sherwood turned out to be our delivery guy that night. He wasn't joining us. When he got to the apartment, there was this awkward air about him. He was obviously nervous, fumbling a bit with the pizza boxes and not quite making eye contact. My friend introduced us quickly, and it was clear from her overly thankful demeanor that Sherwood did a lot more for her than just fetch dinner. After handing us the pizza, there's a brief moment of forced small talk. My friend was super nice to him, despite his awkwardness. He wasn't the best conversationalist and seemed really out of place. Then Sherwood asked for my number. I was in a tough spot because our mutual friend was sitting right there, so I just gave it to him. We chatted for maybe 5 minutes before my friend gave him a cue to leave with something like, "Thank you so much for dropping this off." He seemed to get the hint. We both gave him a hug before my friend said something like, "Drive safe," giving him another cue to leave. When I asked my friend what was that all about, she basically explained that Sherwood was her unpaid personal assistant. He did her grocery shopping, he dropped off pizza, and did all this other stuff. I think Sherwood was just a really lonely guy, desperate for interaction, especially female interaction. My friend and I were both young and immature back then. We were about 23, but I think we both knew that there was something seriously wrong with Sherwood. It was a little hard to articulate because we couldn't exactly point out what his problem was. Sherwood started a group chat with my friend and me. He just sent a meme or two every week. It felt like he was trying to stay relevant without being intrusive. Maybe he was used to being sidelined or even blocked by other girls in the past. It felt like he was trying to make me remember him, but also carefully not trying to give me a reason to block him. I can't speak on his behalf. That's just what it felt like. Sherwood also offered to help with errands. The first time I said, "Thanks for asking, but no." He asked every weekend after that. One day, I made a mistake of accepting his help. I knew better. I had recently found a great deal for a new washing machine on Craigslist, but I had no idea how to pick it up and install it. When I mentioned it in chat, Sherwood excitedly volunteered to take care of the whole thing. He handled the whole pickup and installation like a champ, which saved me so much hassle. I tried to pay him for his efforts because I wanted to show appreciation, but he wouldn't accept my money. I insisted. Eventually, he suggested that I could pay him back by joining him on a hike. I wasn't easy about this. It felt a bit too personal and almost like it could be mistaken for a date. But Sherwood framed it as nothing more than a friendly outing, like a transaction to balance out the favor. I agreed to the hike. I rationalized it by telling myself it was a fair trade for installing a washing machine, and that it was generally a form of payment, especially since I didn't think he had too much friends. The hike felt like it was maybe a way for him to show companionship. I thought it might be nice helping him. Parts of me was still uneasy about spending time with him in such an isolated setting. The day of the hike, Sherwood picked out the trail that was nearby. I had been there before. It's gorgeous. As we were walking along together, he chatted about ordinary things like work, the weather, and his hobbies. Everything seemed normal until he suggested we go off the main path to see something special he wanted to share. Like, what could that even mean? We reached a secluded spot and there was a dead body. My heart pounded so violently as Sherwood stood there, so eerily calm and nonchalant. The calmness in his demeanor made me feel even more uneasy. It felt like he wasn't just showing me a dead body, but also revealing a darker side of himself. It smelled bad, but not like in the movies. I didn't know how long it had been there. I'm not a biologist, but my guess is it had smelled a lot worse before, but now has gone down. At that moment, I mumbled some excuse about needing to get back quickly and started walking briskly towards the main path. I was urging Sherwood to follow me. I thought maybe this was some twisted mind game, like a way to intimidate me or show me that he wasn't just some harmless little boy. Maybe he was trying to send a message that said, "You should know I'm familiar with things like this." Maybe he just wanted me to think about him more. Sometimes when I talk to people, I feel like they only notice me for the time we are together, and then they don't think of me until the next time we meet. It's possible that Sherwood felt that way with me, and maybe he thought showing me a dead body would make him less forgettable. I have no idea. But on the surface, he seemed oblivious to how inappropriate this was. As we walked back together, I was in full fight or flight mode, instinctively looking around to see if there was any other hikers or rangers, anyone that could make me feel like I wasn't alone. The moment I spotted someone else on the trail, I called out, not to expose Sherwood, but just asking for directions back to the parking area. I wanted to make sure that Sherwood and I wouldn't be left alone together. I asked this gentleman to walk us back to the parking lot. I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I kept pretending like I was confused about his directions, and eventually he agreed to just walk us there. Getting help from that guy was a way for me to re-anchor myself to safety and normality while I was still in shock of what Sherwood had shown me. We got to the parking area. There, I called my friend and told her I was with Sherwood. I suggested he could drop me off with her and that we would be there in 20 minutes. Sherwood agreed. That was a way of making sure that if anything happened, it was on record that Sherwood was the last person to have been with me. Also, I immediately texted my friend what happened to get that on record too. When I got to her apartment, we said thanks to Sherwood and kindly told him to go away. I had already told her through text, but then I started going into detail. The fact that the body had insects, the fact that the face was decomposing but still recognizable. Her reaction was pure horror, not just about the dead body, but also how nonchalantly Sherwood had treated the whole situation. She confessed that she always sensed something was off about him, even though she never imagined anything this disturbing. We both agreed that we needed to remove Sherwood from our lives. She admitted that she felt stuck and that she had become too reliant on Sherwood just to fire him cold turkey. We planned out how we would do it. It was this gradual phasing out plan. We would limit our interactions to times when others were present. We would slowly reduce our responses to his text. I would never ask for help from him again, and my friend would ask for less and less help. Sherwood kept texting during the weekends, offering to run errands or asking if I needed anything, to which my friend would reply, "I'm trying to work on being more independent, but you've really been such a help." Eventually, as my friend started dating someone new, she introduced Sherwood to her boyfriend. Sherwood never contacted her after that. I had called the cops the same night of the incident, but it was a while before we heard the news about it. At least a full month later, a news report confirmed discovering a dead body in the area where Sherwood had taken me hiking. They had made an arrest, not of Sherwood, but of this guy that Sherwood followed on Instagram. I have no idea if Sherwood was connected with the murder. Reflecting on everything, I think there's one clear moral to the story. Trust your instincts. I'll preface this by saying this creepy incident happened back in 2004 when my family and I went on a camping trip. I was 12 at the time, and my best friend had came along with us. Up until this moment, the camp had been pretty uneventful. Just your typical fun outdoor stuff, until everything suddenly took a dark turn. One evening, my mother was in the kitchen area TV room, while my friend and I were taking a shower in the bathroom block next door. The showers were built with concrete walls that didn't go all the way to the ground. Instead, there are shallow gutters beneath them that carried the water outside to the drains. This meant if someone walked around behind the shower block, they could see our feet. It was a weird setup, but no one ever really went back there. It was fenced off, and only maintenance had any reason to be behind the block. Well, partway through the shower, we start hearing this eerie, cackling laughter coming from right behind the block. It sounded like a teenage boy. I remember being confused, trying to figure out where that was coming from. I asked my friend if she heard it too, and she nodded, looking just as freaked out as I felt. And then it happened. A head suddenly appeared under the shower stall, peeking through the gap at the bottom. It was a teenage boy grinning up at me while I stood there completely naked and frozen in shock. I screamed loud. I jumped back, wrapped a towel around myself, and kept screaming until my mother burst into the block. Through tears, I somehow managed to explain what just happened. My mom waited for my friend and I to get dressed, then rushed back with us to the tent and told my dad what happened. Without a beat, he told her to alert the camp staff while he grabbed the kayak paddle and took off to the back of the shower block. Unbelievably, he found the guy still crouched behind the wall. We suddenly heard more screaming, but this time from the boy, as he bolted, sprinting past our tent like his life depended on it, with my dad chasing after him, paddle in hand, yelling all the way. My dad chased him clean off the campground and out of sight. That creep never came back. Later, the camp management told us there had been a few recent reports of a young guy lurking near the women's shower block. Even worse, they believe he wasn't even staying in the campground, just some random pervert sneaking in. I'm a male, 14. Me and my friend group, around the same age, all love one thing: sailing. So in the event of a boat race in a lake in Italy, where we were all from, we decided to participate. Since it was the lake hosting the race, there's a lot of green and camping nearby, so my friend suggested that we spend the night all sleeping in one campground. We brought our tents and sleeping mats, and we found the perfect spot, kind of isolated with a beautiful view of the lake. One small issue: the camping was more like an open space than a little forest, so we were surrounded by trees with the only way to get in and out down a narrow road. We parked our camper there, and us teens prepared to sleep outside while the adults slept in the camper. We had a shit ton of fun, joking, starting a fire. You know, all the things you do on a camping trip. When it was time to sleep, we all went into our tents and drifted off into our dreams. Well, I hope so for my friends, but not for me. I just couldn't sleep. Probably because of the uncountable number of cokes I downed just a few hours prior. As I stared at the tent ceiling, I started having this gut feeling that we weren't alone out there. That there was something, or even worse, someone there with us. I didn't think much of it and tried to sleep until I heard a loud sound of a tree branch breaking. And I wasn't the only one to hear it. My friend, who was also in the tent with me, suddenly woke up and whispered, "What was that?" I simply told him that it was probably an animal wandering around, stepping on a tree branch on the ground, as it often occurs in the forest like that. As I kept explaining, my friend made a sign for me to shut up and listen. Footsteps. That's what ran through my mind as soon as I heard the leaves and branches moving on the ground. What happened next, though, is scary. We were suddenly woken up by our camper's anti-theft alarm going off. We all peeked out of our tents just to see a silhouette of a man running away into the woods, and a crowbar left near the camper's front right door. Thankfully, the alarm went off and scared the thief, because if it hadn't happened, most likely all of our belongings that were inside the camper would have been stolen. This is pretty fresh. It happened last weekend. It was supposed to be a perfect weekend. Just me and my two friends, Emma and Jake, going for a short camping trip in the mountains. The kind of trip where you leave the city behind and lose yourself in nature for a few days. I'd been itching for a break from work, so when Jake suggested the trip, I jumped at the chance. A hike, some fresh air, and a cozy campfire to unwind sounded like everything I needed, including the alcohol. We arrived at the trailhead late in the afternoon. The sun was low, casting an orange glow over the trees, but the air smelled of pine, and everything felt so fresh and clean. We packed our gear and headed out on the trail, ready to take in the scenery. It was a relatively easy hike, or so we thought. The map we picked up at the ranger station made it seem straightforward, a loop trail with some great views at the top. We'd get there, have a little break, then head back before dark. The first hour was a breeze, just the sound of crunching leaves beneath our boots and an occasional chirp of birds. The woods were thick with towering trees, but the trail was clear and well marked. We stopped once to take pictures, laughing about how out of shape we were. It wasn't a strenuous hike, but the incline was enough to leave us breathing a little heavier than usual. But then something changed. It wasn't anything drastic at first, just a shift in the air. The woods felt quieter, the kind of silence that creeps up on you and makes the hairs on your neck stand up. I shrugged it off. Nature does that sometimes. Emma, always the optimist, smiled and said, "Maybe we'll see a deer or something." But as we pressed on, things started to feel off. The trail began to narrow, the trees almost seemed to close in around us. And then, about an hour and a half in, we came across a fork in the path. One trail veered left, heading deeper into the woods, while the other one cut right and seemed to lead up a giant slope towards the ridge. Neither of the trails were marked. I double-checked the map, but it didn't show anything that looked like a fork. This was weird. I remember feeling a knot twist in my stomach. We're not supposed to have a fork here, are we? Jake then looked at the map. No, it's supposed to be a continuous loop. Maybe this is an old trail or something. We should just turn back, I said. I was already feeling uneasy. We've been on this for over an hour. I didn't want to get lost. They both laughed it off. Come on, we're fine. Let's just take the right path. It will get us to the ridge for a better view. I wasn't sure, but Emma was excited. So against my better judgment, we chose the path to the right. The higher we went, the steeper the incline became. It wasn't much, but enough to make the climb feel more taxing than it should have been. The trail was still faint, the ground covered with loose rocks and roots, making it tricky to keep our balance. Are you sure we're going the right way? I asked again. I'm pretty sure, Jake said, looking back over his shoulder. I think we're just a little off track. No big deal. But as we climbed, I started to feel a growing sense of dread, like something was wrong. The trees were thicker here, blocking out more of the light, and the air was colder. I thought I was tripping, but a feeling of being watched crept over me. I couldn't shake it. Finally, we reached the top of the ridge. The view was incredible, though. The valley below stretched out. We all stood there for a while, catching our breaths and snapping pictures. But I couldn't stop looking around me. The more I stared into the distance, the more I felt something was missing. Something that didn't feel right. I had no idea what it was. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Okay, let's head back, I said, pulling out the map again, hoping to get a sense of where we were. But when I looked at the map, something didn't make sense. The trail I was supposed to be on, The one where we were supposed to follow back to the campsite wasn't even close to where we were. Guys, we've got a problem. I think we're lost. There's a brief silence. I could see the realization in their eyes before they even said it. The map wasn't matching up to the terrain we were seeing. The path we had followed didn't look like it was on the top of the loop of the map. This doesn't make sense, Emma said. We just followed the ridge, right? We should be able to see the trail on the other side. But there was nothing, just endless trees stretching forever. Maybe we took the wrong fork, Jake suggested. Though he didn't sound convinced. We can just backtrack. We'll find the right one. We retraced our steps, but the further we went, the more disoriented we became. The trail wasn't just unclear, it was disappearing. What had been a recognizable path was now nothing more than a vague outline in the underbrush. Every turn seemed to lead further away from where we came from. The sun was now setting fast, orange light shining over the dark woods, and the temperature was getting colder. That's when I heard it. There was a distant rustle, a crack of something snapping behind us. I stopped dead in my tracks. Did you hear that? Jake and Emma froze too. There it was again, closer this time. A low growl. No, Emma whispered. Something moved in the trees. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a small animal. It was something much larger. Guys, we need to move, now. We started walking faster, but the rustling behind us didn't stop. It was following us. Whatever it was circling us, moving between the trees. I could feel it, watching, waiting. My legs started to burn from the speed, but I couldn't stop. I didn't dare stop. The sound I'll never forget, a loud snap of a branch right behind us. Run, Jake let out. We didn't need another warning. We sprinted through the trees, not caring where the trail went, just knowing that we needed to get away from whatever was out there. The woods were no longer peaceful. They were full of danger, full of things that we couldn't see, but could feel closing in on us. The rest of the hike was a blur. We pushed through the trees, tripped over roots and logs, every once in a while screaming for help, even though we knew no one was around. Our legs were heavy, our hearts racing. We were panicked, I'm not gonna lie. Finally, just as the light of day disappeared, we stumbled on the main trail. We didn't stop running until we reached our campsite. When we looked back to the forest, we couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had followed us, whatever that had been watching us, was still out there. The next morning, the rangers at the station looked at us like we were crazy when we tried to explain what happened. There's nothing out there, just wildlife, and maybe some folks who got turned around. But I know what I heard, and I know what I felt. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just wildlife, and it wasn't something I ever want to encounter again.